It was a calm afternoon on May 7th, 2017, in the small town of Bealier, Ohio, when a seemingly routine visit took a horrifying turn. David Kenny, his wife Sherry, and their young daughter were headed to the home of his close friend Brad McGarry, intending only to return a weed trimmer. But as they approached the house, a sense of unease crept in. The front door remained unanswered, stirring a growing worry. Determined to check further, David led his family around to the back, where they found the service door slightly ajar. Inside, the home was in disarray, with unsettling signs that something was very wrong. Sherry called out for Brad, but the silence that followed was deafening. When Brad didn't respond, David made his way to the basement. What he discovered there would shatter their lives forever. David Kenny was a young man living an unremarkable life. When he turned 21, his mother threw him a grand celebration. Among the guests was Sherry, a stunning single mother who attended the party with her son. That night, David found himself captivated by Sherry, feeling an instant, deep connection. The next day, he confided in his mother that he had found the love of his life and was determined to make Sherry his future. Despite Sherry's many admirable qualities, some in David's circle questioned his choice to marry a woman with 3 young children. They worried about the heavy responsibility for someone so young. Yet David's love and commitment were unwavering. He embraced the challenges of integrating into Sherry's family and envisioned a bright future together. To provide for his new family, David took up a course to become a coal miner, a demanding and dangerous job, but one that promised enough income to support his household. It was during this training that David met Brad McGarry. Born in the 1970s in Cambridge, Ohio, Brad faced significant challenges growing up. Openly gay in a conservative environment, Brad had endured countless insults and prejudice, yet he remained true to himself. Over time, he built a close circle of friends and began a career in hairstyling. However, in the working-class town he lived in, it was a difficult path. Eventually, Brad made a surprising career change, choosing to become a coal miner, a stark contrast to his previous profession. David and Brad quickly became close friends, with Brad becoming a beloved figure in David's family, affectionately known as Uncle Brad by the children. Their friendship grew strong, marked by shared laughter and good times. By 2017, David was 30 years old, happily married to Sherry, and their children were growing up. Meanwhile, Brad was balancing work, family, and a secret romance. On May 7, 2017, after a family gathering, Brad mentioned to a cousin that he needed to return home for a meeting. Later that day, around 6:15 p.m., David, Sherry, and their daughter stopped by Brad's house. They were puzzled when Brad didn't answer the door, despite his car being parked outside. Growing more concerned, they circled to the back and found the service door unlocked. Sherry searched upstairs while David descended into the basement, where he was met with a sight that would haunt him: Brad's lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. Hearing her husband's horrified scream, Sherry rushed downstairs, only to be met with the same grim scene. Sherry immediately dialed 911, and soon the police were notified of the tragedy. Upon arrival, they found David and Sherry visibly shaken, recounting how they had come to check on Brad, only to discover his horrific fate. The couple described their deep bond with Brad, emphasizing how he was practically family, often spending holidays with them and their children. They had even planned a trip to the Bahamas with him later that summer. When asked if Brad had any enemies or troubling circumstances, David and Sherry mentioned Brad's recent breakup with a man named Scotty. They didn't know his last name, but described the relationship as turbulent, marked by frequent arguments. The police then began meticulously examining the crime scene. In the basement, they found Brad lying face down in a large pool of blood, clearly having been shot at least once in the head. Initially, they speculated whether Brad had taken his own life, but when the forensic expert arrived, they asked the officers if a weapon had been found. The officers hadn't, but since suicide victims often fall on their weapon, they turned the body over, finding no gun. The suicide theory was quickly dismissed. As the investigation deepened, detectives noticed peculiar details around the house. The kitchen was in disarray, with drawers pulled open, and the living room was equally chaotic. At first, it seemed like a botched robbery. Yet, on closer inspection, the detectives realized that nothing of value was missing, despite the house being filled with collectibles, art, and even money scattered on the floor. It soon became clear that the robbery was staged to mislead them. Given Brad's background as an openly gay man in a traditionally conservative coal mining town, detectives considered the possibility of a hate crime. However, when they interviewed his colleagues, they were surprised to hear nothing but respect and admiration for Brad. This theory was quickly ruled out. The investigation shifted focus after detectives learned more about Brad's turbulent relationship with Scotty. A close friend confirmed that Brad's recent breakup had been full of conflict, leading to increasing tension. However, Scotty was quickly ruled out when police discovered he had been in jail for 3 months. Though he was dismissed as the perpetrator, the possibility that Scotty orchestrated the crime from behind bars with an accomplice was still on the table. Detectives interviewed Scotty in jail, informing him of Brad's death. His shaken reaction nearly ruled him out as a suspect. Desperate for leads, detectives canvassed the neighborhood, eventually finding a surveillance camera near Brad's house that might offer clues. As they reviewed hours of footage, they also continued questioning friends and family. The case took a dramatic turn when a cousin revealed that Brad had left a family lunch between 1:30 and 2 p.m. on the day of the murder, mentioning that a man named DJ was supposed to visit him. Brad had joked about planning to take a nap with his guest, hinting at a romantic encounter. The cousin also revealed that DJ was married and had kept his relationship with Brad hidden from his wife. Under pressure from detectives, the cousin reluctantly revealed that DJ was none other than David, the very man who discovered Brad's body. When asked if she was certain, she confirmed that David was the only man Brad ever spoke about in that context. The revelation changed everything. Until that point, David had been viewed as a grieving friend, shaken by the tragedy, but now he became the prime suspect. Detectives used the pretense of needing to retrieve photos from David's phone to get him to hand over his device. In truth, they were tracking his location during the time of the murder and looking for evidence connecting him to the crime. While no direct proof was found, suspicious gaps in his alibi raised red flags. The police then invited David for a formal interview, confronting him about his secret relationship with Brad. Taken aback, David vehemently denied the affair, insisting Brad was just a friend. But the detectives had gathered enough evidence to suspect otherwise. As the investigation progressed, more details emerged, revealing growing tension between David and Brad. It became clear that Brad had been pressuring David to leave Sherry and live with him openly, straining their relationship. Eventually, under mounting pressure, David confessed to the affair. He admitted that he went to Brad's house to confront him about the relationship. According to David, Brad became aggressive, threatening to expose the affair to Sherry. In a moment of panic, David claimed he grabbed a handgun from Brad's closet and shot him in the head before fleeing. After hours of interrogation, David led the police to where he disposed of the weapon and the clothes he wore during the murder. These discoveries, along with David's confession, sealed his fate. In exchange for cooperation, David was offered a plea deal to avoid life without parole. David later confessed that he hid the affair from Sherry, but insisted it had only lasted a few months. He claimed that Brad snapped when David tried to end things, brandishing a gun, which led to a struggle. David asserted that he acted in self-defense. However, forensic evidence told a different story. Brad had been shot twice in the back of the head, a scenario inconsistent with David's version of events. Despite David's account, detectives remained convinced that the shooting was an execution, not an act of self-defense. Even before David's arrest, Sherry was unaware of the affair. When David confessed, she was devastated, unable to comprehend the betrayal. On May 9th, David was charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors argued that Brad's threats to expose the affair gave David a motive. During the trial, surveillance footage and body cam videos highlighted inconsistencies in David's story. Forensic experts testified that the physical evidence ruled out self-defense. Despite the defense's claims, the jury found David guilty of aggravated murder. At sentencing, David expressed regret, wishing he could undo what he'd done. But the judge was unsympathetic, labeling the crime as a calculated execution followed by an elaborate cover-up. In February 2018, David was sentenced to life without parole, plus an additional 3 years for the firearm offense. Since his conviction, David's appeals have been denied, leaving him to serve his sentence in Ohio. The tragic murder of Brad McGarry remains a haunting reminder of how secrets and deception can lead to devastating consequences.